Good morning, students. Probably this is the last class in urology for you all. I tried to complete certain topics given by the HOD surgery for you to be taught in urology. The rest of things which are not covered, probably they are covered by the general surgery people as well. But if you want anything in the urology, from the point of view of examination, you can always send me a message. I'll talk to the HOD surgery and try to do it. We have done important topics of congenital anomalies, traumatic, inflammatory, neoplastic diseases, kidney, ureter, bladder, and prostate. And there are certain short notes which are given to me to be covered, and we will be covering those today. Probably you have received already the topic sent to you today, and I hope you have gone through those things. So we'll start with the topics one by one. One thing is hematuria. We have seen that hematuria is the symptom in many of these urological diseases, starting from calicus, inflammation, tumors, and the fact that hematuria should not be taken lightly. So hematuria should be investigated thoroughly, and the reasons may not be surgical always. There can be causes of medical diseases of the kidney also produce hematuria, though not in a torrential bleeding with clots or something like that. Medical renal disease doesn't produce such type of hematuria, but persistent hematuria and microscopic examination, along with the other observations, will throw a light that it could be medical renal hematuria. This is also very significant because this may mean a renal disease which may lead to end-stage disease, renal failure. So I'll go through one by one because though it is covered, it is not covered as a notes. That's why I'm doing this. So what is hematuria? Hematuria is presence of RBC in urine. Blood in urine, blood by means RBC only. So are normally blood RBC present in urine? What is abnormal presence of RBC called hematuria? You have to know. At least 1 million RBC are excreted through urine per day. That means definitely there will be some RBC in the urine and it's not alarming. Hematuria is defined as the presence of 5 or more RBC per high power field in 3 consecutive centrifuge specimens obtained at least 1 week apart. This is standard definition of hematuria. Hematuria are more than 5 RBC should be present per high power field at least on 3 occasions. And in females is slightly more in number. But clinically significant hematuria is presence of 5 or more RBC per high power field on 3 consecutive occasions. Then what are the types of hematuria? Types of hematuria and dependent on the number of RBC or blood in urine can be a gross hematuria, overtly bloody, smoky or tea-colored urine, or microscopic hematuria, more than 5 RBC per high power field. And it can be an initial or early hematuria of urethral origin, distal to the external sphincter, terminal hematuria, bladder, neck, or prostate, diffuse total hematuria, source is in the bladder or upper tract. Again, it can be a painful hematuria or a painless hematuria, painless pointing more to malignancies. What is the pathophysiology? The all red colored urine is not hematuria. So you have to, this is false hematuria. You have to do the microscopic examination to confirm presence of RBC. Sometimes people malingering may add something to the urine to show that they are having hematuria for admission purposes. But you have to confirm it by means of a microscopic examination. Silent hematuria is due to tumors of the kidney. As I said, painless total hematuria is a silent hematuria, and it is basically the hematuria can be from the renal glomerular system or non-glomerular, right? So glomerular most often are medical hematuria, non-glomerular surgical hematuria. As you see here, the causes can be anything from benign to malignant. Glomerulonephritis, infarction of the kidney, renal stone, tuberculosis, trauma, renal vein thrombosis, renal arterial thrombosis can also produce hematuria. Malignancy, renal pelvic malignancy, ureteric tumors, ureteric stone, and bleeding disorders, general bleeding disorders also produce hematuria. And you have to be aware of these things, whether the patient is using some drugs or not. Then inflammatory hematuria, cystitis, tuberculosis, vesical calculus, endemic hematuria due to parasites, bilharziasis and this thing. Benign prostate hypertrophy also can produce hematuria. And I should remind you, this is called decoy prostate when there is some bladder tumor inside and the prostate also. We assume that the hematuria is due to prostate, but there can be a bladder cancer. Carcinoma of the prostate, urethral injury and urethral tumors and other causes. So starting from kidney down to the bladder, prostate, urethra, there can be source of hematuria and reasons, either inflammatory, neoplastic or otherwise. Kidney per se can produce glomerular hematuria. These RBC can be differentiated. The upper tract bleeding and the lower tract bleeding can be differentiated by means of phase contrast microscopy. So once again, coming to etiology, the most common causes are glomerular, interstitial disease of the kidney, urothelium, and vascular reasons. Systemic disorders are less common, but still they can produce hematuria and is a part of total syndrome. Hematological disorders like aplastic anemia, leukemia, all these can produce purpura, thrombocytopenia. They can produce hematuria apart from bleeding tendencies elsewhere. Infection, infective endocarditis, septicemia, and scarlet fever, filariasis. As I said, filariasis can cause chyluria or hematochhyluria. So these are the certain reasons which produce hematuria. Connective tissue disorders, systemic lupus erythematosus, and these are a part of the syndrome is hematuria. Cardiovascular diseases like hypertensive nephropathy, chronic heart congestive cardiac failure, and renal artery stenosis, all these can produce hematuria. Endocrine and metabolic disorders, gout, diabetes complications that can produce hematuria. Diseases of adjacent organs in the urinary tract also can produce hematuria, though the reason is not exactly urinary tract. Acute appendicitis can irritate the ureter and bladder to produce hematuria. Carcinoma of the rectum, carcinoma of the rest of the colon, and ureterocervical cancer, this can involve the urinary tract to produce hematuria. The commonest reason previously was a carcinoma of the cervix infiltrating into the bladder or producing diffuse cystitis to produce hematuria. So that has to be differentiated. Different diseases of the adjacent organs have to be considered when there is hematuria and no disease of urinary tract per se. Certain drugs also produce hematuria or red-colored urine, which you have to differentiate by means of microscopic examination. Exercise-induced hematuria is one peculiar thing, wherein it is seen only after severe exercise and then disappears after in between. So when there is patient complains that he is passing reddish urine, you have to differentially diagnose and come to diagnose that it is hematuria and seriousness of which it has to be evaluated. Polluted urine is one of the reasons for blood in the urine. I said menstrual contamination of urine produces hematuria. You can find RBC also in that. So you have to wait to confirm till the bleeding subsides. Then carcinoma cervix, bleeding from carcinoma cervix also can be mixed with urine. And I had one patient, mother of an orthopedic surgeon, was brought to me as a case of hematuria because she was saying it is hematuria. But when I examined, it was stage 4 carcinoma of the cervix. The woman was not aware and they don't talk. That's why the doctor also was not aware. And this was brought to a case of hematuria. Ultimately, it is carcinoma cervix. Drugs and foods, rifampicin, nitrofurantoin, sulfonamides, these produce discolored urine. You have to differentiate from them. Hematuria is presence of RBC on microscopy, nothing else. Porphyria, to start with, it will be reddish. On standing, it becomes blackish in color. hemoglobinuria due to hemolysis. Again, which is colored dark brown or red. No RBC are there on microscopic examination. Myoglobinuria also occurs after severe exercise and some diseases. Again, there are no RBC in the urine. So how to diagnose hematuria? Urine, usually, nowadays everything is a dipstick. Urine dipstick analysis is the most commonly used method of diagnosis for blood hematuria. This is based on the peroxidase reaction. The hemoglobin generates a color change. So this is usually a screening thing, but ultimately you have to confirm it by means of microscopic examination. Phase contrast microscopy helps to determine the source of the bleeding, either upper tract or lower tract, depending on the changes in the RBC. Hematologic and coagulation studies, as I said, these can produce patient taking anticoagulants like clopidogrel and other drugs can have hematuria. So you'll have to take the complete blood count to rule out leukemias and other things. And sometimes platelet count also is decreased to produce bleeding. So these are also hematuria, CBC and workup is also important, coagulation studies. Blood urea nitrogen for paraneoplastic syndromes and serum creatinine levels for kidney failure. We have to measure this. Renal functions are very important in hematuria. And serological testings to diagnose these certain of the drugs, certain of the diseases produced by autoimmunity. And urine culture to diagnose urinary infection. And these imaging studies will help you to come to a diagnosis, whether it is medical hematuria or surgical hematuria. Ultrasound examination and cystoscopy, CT scan, voiding cystourethropy, MRI, retrograde pyelography, and ultimately, if it is required, renal biopsy. All these things help you to differentiate between the medical and surgical hematuria and point out to the cause of hematuria by which you can treat. Ultimately, if you cannot come to anything and there is significant proteinuria associated hematuria points out to renal etiology. So there can be a nephrotic syndrome, chronic glomerular nephritis, chronic interstitial nephritis, and other things which produce hematuria. And this is a prolonged condition, chronic condition, which may lead on to renal failure. An abnormal renal function points out to upper tract pathology. Usually in surgical lesions of the kidney, the renal function will not be altered because God has given two kidneys. Even if one kidney is diseased, the other kidney takes over the function of the opposite kidney. Not much of changes in the renal function unless it is due to some comorbid condition like diabetes. Serological abnormalities, as I said, anti-nuclear factor and all these things to autoimmune disorders, to rule out autoimmune disorders of the kidney. Recurrent gross hematuria is one thing which cannot be neglected. You don't find any surgical problem. You have to do a kidney biopsy to know the cause. The family history of end-stage renal disease, so many times I know one family wherein the son had renal failure, and when father was also investigated, he also was found to have a similar lesion in the kidney. So this is not an exhaustive list, but grossly, what is hematuria? What are the reasons of hematuria, causes of hematuria? How to differentiate? What are the investigations to differentiate to hematuria? Of course, the treatment depends on the cause. Surgical lesions, you need surgery. Medical lesions require monitoring and management by various drugs. So this is in short about hematuria. Once again, everything that is red is not blood. So only presence of RBC of more than 5 per high per field on 3 consecutive occasions only is hematuria. So if you have doubt, repeat the test again and take into the thing to prevent contamination, especially the female menstrual contamination. And beware of certain people who require hospitalization. So they can put 1 or 2 drops of urine, blood, prick the finger and put it to the urine. So repeated examinations if you suspect that, repeated examinations under careful observation need to be done. This is regarding hematuria. We have three more topics: hypospadias, stricture urethra, and tumor markers in surgery to be covered today. So why? Next is hypospadias. It is hypospadias, but not hypospadiasis. This difference you have to understand. Many people pronounce it as hypospadiasis, which is wrong. What is hypospadias? Where is normal urethral opening? Normal urethral opening is the tip of the glans. It's a vertical slit at the tip of the glans. And rest of the urethra resembles a rifle bore. That is why whenever one passes urine, there is some torque, rotation of the urinary stream and projection. If the urethral opening is not like that, there will not be any stream, projectile stream. So projectile stream is because of the vertical slit and a barrel-like urethra, barrel-like, rifle bore-like urethra. So any abnormality of this will cause certain problems. And remember that in a male, the organ penis is for both urination and reproduction also, seminal deposition also. So this disease is sometimes recognized, but many times not recognized. Severe degrees of hypospadias are diagnosed as a female child and brought up as a female. We had one case wherein the child was brought to us because not attained menarche. That was the complaint, not attained menarche. But when you go into history, he was feeling like a boy, never liked to mingle with girls and all. And when we have examined, it was a case of severe degree of hypospadias. And this was brought up as a girl. Because the rod area after delivery, the thigh has fixed the female these things to the child. So we had to make him shave the head and wear pant and knicker, move in his village for 3 months to be recognized as a male. And that's why identification and sex of the child is very important. We take it for granted, but it's not so. So what is hypospadias? We'll go through this. It is the most common congenital abnormality of the urethra. It occurs around 1 in 200 to 300 male live births. There are three characteristics of a hypospadiac defect. The urethral opening, which normally opens at the tip of the glans is very much normally formed with prepuce all around. Normally, the organ looks like that. Whereas here, the meatus is not at the tip of the glans. It opens on the undersurface, ventral aspect of the penis, and it can be anywhere from the penis to the perineum. The ventral aspect of the prepuce is poorly developed. So there is excess of prepuce on the dorsal, which is called hooded prepuce. And another third abnormality is the ventral curvature of the penis, which is called cardi. So the penis is bent like this because normally urethra is at the tip and penis is straight. Whereas here, opening is somewhere, so there is contraction, and that is called cardi. So three components: ventral opening of the urethra, hooded prepuce, and cardi. These are the components of hypospadias. It is believed to result from arrested penile development, leaving a proximal urethral meatus. So urethra and the muscle are developed only after extent, and later on there is no development so it is a fibrous tissue. The fibrous tissue tags on the glans to cardi. So it can be defined as hypoplasia of the tissues forming the ventral aspect of the penis beyond the division of the corpus spongiosum. So corpus spongiosum also develops only up to a point. So there are certain associated conditions with hypospadias, like cryptorchidism. You know what is cryptorchidism? It is undescended testis. Testis is not descendant into scrotum. Then bifid scrotum. Severe degree of hypospadias is a bifid scrotum, associated inguinal hernia, and in upper tract anomalies. You have to do compulsorily evaluate the upper tract also if you see a child with hypospadias. Usually this is diagnosed at birth, unless it is a severe degree of hypospadias wherein people miss the boy to be a girl. Otherwise, normally penis is short, curved, and bent penis is observed. So associated conditions are also important. So this is hypospadias. When it's not normally opened urethra, it can be a glandular hypospadias, a colonal hypospadias, penile and pinoscrotal hypospadias, perineal hypospadias, depending on the level of the urethral opening, and associated cardi abnormality. Cardi is the associated abnormality, which is absence of urethra and corpus spongiosum distal to the ectopic opening of the urethra. As I said, it develops only to a level. Later on, there is no corpus spongiosum, no urethra, only fibrous tissue, which has a bowstring effect on the rest of the penis, causing cardi. These absent structures are represented by fibrous cord, which deform the penis in a downward direction. So, cardi. So, classification, I'll show you in the next thing. This is the classification of hypospadias. Normally, it is at the tip. If it is not at the tip, it is glandular, then subcoronal. Then in the penis, it is either distal penile, mid-penile, or proximal penile. Pinoscrotal, and then scrotal, and then perineal. These are all the sites where urethral opening can be there. And imagine the amount of cardi. The amount of cardi depends on the opening. Suppose it is pinoscrotal thing, it's very much bent. So if it is only glandular and subcoronal, it may not be diagnosed or it may cause any functional effects. So this opening, abnormal opening of the urethra, because rest of the urethra is not open, causes cardi, severe cardi. So the combination of ventrally placed urethral meatus, excess of foreskin on the dorsum and cardi, are these things are the components of hypospadias. Usually, parents bring you the child immediately after birth or around to know when this can be operated. What is this? Is there any medical treatment? When can be operated? There is no medical treatment for this because it's an anatomical abnormality. You have to do a lot of operations, sometimes single or sometimes multiple. You have to correct the cardi, and when you correct the cardi, the opening here becomes more proximal. You have to create the urethra up to these glands and make it functional. As I said, it's not only urination, it is reproduction also an important function, wherein semen should be deposited in the vagina. This is also an important one. So we'll have to take care of both the things. So the tendency is to do a circumcision. If you take in a rural practitioner with excess of skin on the dorsum, what they do is a circumcision. So one should never do circumcision because preputial skin is invaluable skin which can be used in the repair. So never do circumcision in a child with hypospadias. So many procedures are based on this preputial skin. So it is invaluable like a gold. Preputial skin is like gold. So you should never operate, do a circumcision. Surgical treatment should be undertaken by a pediatric surgeon or a urologist before 2 years of age. Only thing is, anesthesia should be safe. Patient should be fit for general anesthesia because child cannot be done under local or spinal anesthesia. So mostly sometimes the abnormal opening is stenosed. So you have to, child cries with pain when passing urine, or there can be some retention also. Then you'll have to do, before you do any operations, you have to clear this defect. So you do a meatal dilatation or a meatotomy, cut the meatus. Normally, meatus is cut on the ventral aspect, whereas here in hypospadias, it is a dorsal meatotomy. So that ventral meatotomy further causes the abnormality to increase. So it's a dorsal meatotomy. Then the second operation is a cardi release. That is, it is tethered by fibrous tissue. So fibrous tissue is released, penis is straightened. That is the next step, cardi release. This, as I said, this causes the urethral opening to move more proximally. Then you have to correct the urethra, recreate the urethra using preputial skin, and or if it is not available or defective, multiple things, single stage or 2-stage operations to create the urethra. That urethra is devoid of corpus spongiosum naturally. Corpus spongiosum cannot be brought down there. So there are certain disadvantages, but there is a tube supported so that patient urinates on the tip of the penis, and seminal deposition also occurs. Urinary diversion after urethroplasty may be required to protect the plastic operation head on. And before 2 years of age, this can be operated. Mostly, doctors also advise that it can be done later on, not now. But you have to take the psychological aspect of the child also into mind. Around 3 to 4 years, the gender differentiation is already there, and this causes psychological problems later on. If you bring up a male child as a female child or something like that, psychological makeup is very important consideration. So you have to evaluate preoperatively, because in some cases intersex also may present like this. So isolated anterior middle hypospadias, penile hypospadias may not require intersex evaluation. Severe degrees of hypospadias need sex chromatin evaluation and also other tests. Any degree of hypospadias and cryptorchidism, the testes are not palpable, not seen, then you have to investigate for intersex. Hypospadias with developmental delay, dysmorphic phases, other anorectal anomalies, definitely you have to evaluate for intersex and other problems. Posterior hypospadias, regardless of gonadal position or palpability, when there is severe degree of perineal hypospadias or scrotal hypospadias, you'll have to do it. You have to do an intersex evaluation, because what you are palpating may not be testis always, maybe ovotestis or some abnormalities. In ultrasound and gonadal histology, sometimes what is palpable may need to be biopsy to know the sex of the child. Chromosomal, biochemical and molecular testing also may need to be done in severe degrees of pinoscrotal and perineal hypospadias. As I said, definitely these cases will be brought up as a female because of wrong sex being attributed. So ultimately, the treatment of hypospadias, what you have to achieve is a straight penis. There should not be any chordae. How do you assess whether how much of chordae is there? It is by means of an artificial erection. You tie a thing to the root of the penis and then inject normal saline into the corpus to increase distance and cause an erection, artificial erection. Then the bend is more manifest. Totally, you can see what is that. This is called Gitti's test. And slit-like meatus at the tip. This is also your aim. There should be a slit-like meatus at the glans tip. Not any compromise, but there are many problems getting this, and we have to overcome that. Urethra of uniform caliber, because urine has to come through that. As I said, God has given a beautiful urethra with a rifle bore appearance surrounded by the muzzle to give it resistance and all. But what we create is comparable, not at all comparable to what God has given. You are creating a conduit for urine to be passed at the tip of the penis. So urethra of uniform caliber and adequate length. Symmetrical glands. The glands also should be symmetrical. It should not be flat or something like that. And this is also important because of the body image it produces. And projectile stream, ultimately, your aim is to have a projectile stream and normal erection and seminal deposition. This is your goal of hypospadia surgery. There are many operations for hypospadia surgery, single stage, multiple stages, and all these things. And you are concerned only with diagnosis and what is to be done. See here, this is, the opening is here, but these are all glands, wide urethral. This is also urethral plate. So adequate glands without chordae. This not much of a chordae because opening is here, not much of a chordae. So you can easily treat such disease. You see here, this is only a coronal or glandular hypospadia. Instead of there, this is here. So many people disregard this, they don't come for treatment also. See, this is what I said, excess for dorsal hood prepuce. So here, this is opening, and this is a shallow thing. These things can be corrected easily because not much of chordae is involved. So this finishes our hypospadias. Hypospadias is A very common anomaly with which you will be brought, even though you don't treat and operate, you should know what is hypospadias, when it can be repaired, and if you are in doubt, don't assign any sex to a child. Say that it requires further evaluation. If it is a severe perineal hypospadias, which exactly looks like female genitalia, but need to evaluate further. So you should not assign any gender if you are not very sure. And all these things should be treated before 2 years of age, because now anesthesia is very safe and it can be done meticulously. Beautiful suture material are available nowadays. So preputial skin is very much helpful. I mean, like gold to be used in this urethroplasty. So that is hypospadias. Hypospadias consists of 3 components. One is opening on the ventral aspect, excess of dorsal prepuce, and a chordae. These are the components. Then we have the third one, stricture urethra. Stricture urethra is also a short note for you. Once again, like hypospadias requires urethroplasty, stricture urethra requires urethroplasty. There are very many operations. Both of these things require formation of tube. Defective part of the tube to be created so that patient passes urine freely in good projectile stream from the tip of the organ. So one question I have to ask you is, what is stricture and what is stenosis? You can answer that, I will be very happy. What is stricture and what is stenosis? I'll wait for this till then, right? Now we'll go for stricture. Stricture urethra is a very common cause. Used to be very much common earlier because of the gonococcal urethritis, which used to be very common. And later on now, the instrumentation strictures are more common now. And traumatic strictures. We have discussed the bulbar urethral trauma and the posterior fracture pelvis with post-urethral trauma. So those are important causes of stricture, apart from certain congenital problems. The stricture urethra is a narrowing of the urethral lumen because of a scar in or around the urethra, which blocks the flow of the urine and is a result of inflammation, injury, or infection, as we said. So there is normal caliber. Normally, a 16 French urethral catheter can be passed easily into the bladder. The meatus is also adequate, it doesn't stop. So the meatal opening is also there. So stricture can be anywhere from urethra is from tip of the glans to the prostate urethra. So anywhere the stricture of urethra can form and lead to difficulty in urination, subsequent complications. So there are certain congenital causes of stricture, like external meatus can be narrow. Most children present with meatal stenosis soon after birth. And also another differential diagnosis is preputial stenosis. Stricture urethra, meatal stricture, or a preputial stenosis. Preputial stenosis means there is prepuce is adherent, it is not separated. Normally, there are separation of tissue, prepuce from the glands occurs by the end of 2 to 3 years. Even before that, there are adhesions and child passes urine into the preputial sac. So you have to do sometimes preputial dilatation or external meatus dilatation also. This congenital strictures also can cause a penoscrotal junction. This results in severe back pressure on the urinary system, leading to hypertrophy of the ureter, uretrovesical reflux, hydronephrosis, bilateral hydronephrosis, and ultimately renal failure. If you miss that. So as I said, any child with urinary infection should be investigated for these congenital problems. Then you will not miss. Single attack of urinary tract infection, especially in a male child, should be investigated for all these problems. To avoid all these complications, if there is a retention of urine because of the stricture, simple suprapubic drainage also may be required, which reverses the effects of obstruction. Then the common causes now are traumatic, post-traumatic strictures, like bulbar urethral injury, manhole injury to the bulbar urethra directly, or a kick in the perineum causes bulbar urethral rupture, and later on healing with fibrosis, it causes urethral stricture. Pelvic fracture urethral disruption injury causes stricture of the posterior urethra. And secondary to urethral instrumentation, nowadays, urologists are causing more strictures after trans urethral TURP, dissection of the prostate, stricture can occur in the bulbar urethra. Or cystoscopic, endoscopic examination, repeated passage of instrument per urethra and bringing it out can cause urethral damage. Simple urethral catheterization itself can cause stricture because if you remember, urethra, male urethra is an S-shaped organ. Bend is there, bulbar urethra. So if you leave the catheter for a long time, it retains in the S bend and causes something like decubitus ulcer and stricture. And secondary to transrectal TURP or radical prostatectomy, there is narrowing and stricture is a real complication of these things. That means iatrogenic due to all these things. Sometimes idiopathic stricture occurs, and inflammatory strictures used to be very common in gonorrhea when their gonococcal urethritis are common. Now it is due to non-specific urethritis. So gonococcal urethritis, now non-specific urethritis, are very rarely tuberculous strictures of urethra. Malignant strictures of urethra can also be there. Stricture urethra is not at one end. Traumatic strictures are very much localized, whereas infective strictures are not localized. This is because the urethral infection goes into the periurethral glands. They form microabscesses and they rupture, involving the rest of the urethra. So there is involvement of the mucosa and muscle. Corpora also, or bulbous spongiosum is also involved. Bulbous spongiosum muscle is also involved in stricture. So this is very important because ultimately fibrosis causes stricture. Balanitis erotica obliterans is one thing which is very common seen in as a cause of meatal stenosis, because this is diagnosed, you can manage. You manage meatus, but urethra, rest of the urethra also can be affected by this balanitis erotica, and it is very difficult to treat. It's a rare condition characterized by fibrosis in the foreskin, resulting in phimosis and meatal stenosis. A lot of adhesions. Circumcision also is very difficult in VXO cases. So what are the symptoms of stricture urethra? Painful urination, slow stream, residual urine, presence of residual urine, splaying of the urinary stream, hematuria, and abdominal pain due to chronic bladder distration, urethral discharge, recurrent urinary infections in men, and infertility in men. As I said, infertility, severe stricture, infertility also could be there. How do we diagnose stricture? We have discussed in case of rupture urethra. The retrograde ureterogram, stricture has one proximal and two distal. Is it right? Two limits of stricture are there. To know, one thing is a retrograde ureterogram. You do a retrograde ureterogram injecting dye through the urethra. See, this is a normal ureterogram wherein urethra is of adequate caliber, filled nicely. This is the bulbar urethra, tapering to the sphincteric level and dye going into the bladder. This is a normal ureterogram. Whereas here, you see, normal urethra is up to this, but here is a narrowing. But the dye is going there, irregular, and there is stricture. Dye may or may not go into the bladder, but there is a stricture. So, distal limit of the stricture. This is distal limit of the stricture. If the dye is not going beyond, you know only the distal limit. How do you know the proximal limit? Proximal limit is done by micturating cystourethrogram. You fill the bladder with the dye and then ask the patient to pass urine. Then you know the distal limit and proximal limit. You measure the distance and you plan your surgery based on the length of the urethra. Site of the urethra stricture is by retrograde ureterogram. Length of the stricture is by means of combined study of stricture ureterogram, micturating cystourethrogram and retrograde ureterogram. So, you see, this is how a stricture looks like in urethroscopy. When you do a urethroscopy, stricture is like this. Sometimes it may not allow even a 3 French or 4 French ureteric catheter. Normally, 16 French is passed easily. So, this is how a stricture looks like when you see endoscopically. So, what do you do? We have a peculiar name, visual uroflowmetry. Uroflowmetry is an advanced, requires some equipment and all. Visual uroflowmetry is asking the patient to pass urine before, under your observation, and see how the flow is. Cheapest diagnostic test, visual uroflowmetry, but that not be stated in the examination. The urinary flow studies are done to know the volume passed, what is the, as I said, normal passage of urine is 15 ml per second. Based on this, quantify how much of urine is being passed and all these things. It gives an objective measurement of the degree of obstruction and any changes occurring in subsequent to treatment. You can also document your urethroplasty. The important thing about stricture urethra is the complication it causes apart from urinary obstruction. Acute urinary retention can be there or chronic retention can be there. Because of the high pressure pass, urethral diverticum can be there. Periurethral abscess is a very important complication of stricture urethra. When the urethral infection spreads to the periurethral glands, it forms a periurethral abscess. And people with stricture urethra are treated also have this problem of repeated attacks of periurethral abscess, and which has to be drained, sometimes diversion done. And nowadays the problem is less because of the improved technique of urethroplasty and other things. And very much narrow, sometimes caliculae also can form. In periurethral abscess, multiple periurethral abscess occurring and rupturing causes a type of disease wherein when the patient passes urine, it is played like that. Multiple openings and hernia, hemorrhoids and rectal collapse because of the straining. See? Straining to pass urine, we can develop hernia and other things. So when there is stricture, there is stagnation of urine, which leads to infection of stagnant urine, proximal to stricture, periurethral abscess, rupture, urinary fistula. Rupture of the periurethral abscess outside leads to a urinary fistula. Multiple urinary fistulae through perineum is called watering can perineum. You see that as you use a watering can, there is discharge of urine through multiple fistulae. It's a very dreaded complication of urethral stricture. Not seen nowadays. Previously, it used to be seen because of the adequate treatment now. So, what these people require is once a diversion of urine, is not allow urine to come through the normal urine. A suprapubic diversion, because you cannot pass a catheter, you have to do an SPC, suprapubic cystectomy, to divert urine so that the infection heals, the fistula heals, and the abscess heals. So then, after at least 3 months, you can do a definitive surgery. See here, we already discussed here, straining produces all these things. Due to chronic retention, infection, prostatitis, cystitis, and ascending infection cause pyelonephritis. And caliculae also form. Stricture urethra complications, vesical caliculae. As I said, in a male, presence of vesical caliculae, you have to investigate the outflow obstruction. And what is the treatment for stricture? Previously, we used to do blind urethral dilatation. Nowadays, it is not done. Urethra dilator is passed gradually, increasing size of thing. You reach a particular size, that is urethral dilatation. Blind procedure where you can damage the urethra or adjacent rectum, something like that. So now what you do is an optical internal ureterotomy or visual internal ureterotomy. By means of a ureteroscope, you see the stricture as I have shown in the previous figure, and then they cut the stricture in 12 o'clock position. Then so that it relaxes. The principle behind it is when there is a thing like that, if you cut one side, it relaxes totally. But the involvement of muscle, you cut, muscle relaxes. That's right. And then put a catheter. Again, catheter induces infection, but it will not be to that level. So if you can form a 12 French or 14 French urethral lumen, it is good. Meatotomy, if there is a meatal stenosis due to balanitis erotica obliterans or single stricture. Meatotomy or meatoplasty. Meatoplasty is cutting the meatus and putting a skin flap so that it will not come together again and to form recurrence. That's called meatoplasty. Meatotomy and meatoplasty. Permanent urethral stents are not seen one because it's not a treatment for stricture. Now, so many surgical procedures are available for treatment of stricture urethra. Laser cutting, instead of blade, using blade, you cut with laser. Again, the same thing, sophisticated, like taking coffee in a 5-star hotel. And open operations, stricture urethra, surgical procedures, various surgical procedures are there, wherein the primary repair consists of excision of the fibrotic urethral segment with re-anastomosis, end-to-end anastomosis. That's the best thing which can be done to a stricture if it is possible. If it's not possible, then you do other procedures. Complete excision of the stricture, fibrosis. As I said, infective strictures are not at one level, but they extend. There should be tension-free anastomosis, a widely patent anastomosis. Used for stricture length of 1 to 2 centimeters with extensive mobilization of the corpus, etc. Repair is stented with small silicone catheter. So, excision anastomosis is the primary repair, which is possible. If it is not possible, the length of the stricture is more, then you have to do a two-stage procedure, or even nowadays, even bigger lengths are substituted by single-stage erythroplasty only, using the prepuce or the prepusal length, or penile skin also used, and all the stricture is excised, and then skin is approximated and to the margins of the raw strictured bed, so that then tube is reformed using the skin. So this is two-stage procedure or single-stage procedure, primary repair by excision of the stricture and anastomosis, or a single-stage or multiple-stage procedure using the penile skin or the prepusal skin. So that is about stricture. You have to know. I asked you a question about what is stricture and what is stenosis. I would like to see you how many people have answered. Anyway, and you can see it there. So the last thing which you may see is tumor markers. There are certain tumor markers. I've been told that you are already been covered tumor markers in the general surgical examination, general topics. So it needs to be done only for urological cases. Tumor markers have traditionally been proteins of other substances that are made by both normal and cancer cells. These things are produced both by normal and cancer cells, but at a higher element by the cancer cells. And these things can be present in the blood, urine, stool, tumors or other tissues themselves, or other body fluids, or some patients with cancer. Genomic cancer markers such as tumor gene mutations are also studied. They are also called tumor markers. And non-genetic changes in tumor's DNA are being used also as tumor markers. Circulating tumor markers can be found in blood, urine, stool, or other body fluids. Tumor tissue, so these are two types of tissue markers. One is circulating tumor markers in blood. Tumor tissue markers are found in the actual tumors themselves, typically the sample of tumor that is removed during a biopsy. Circulating tumor markers are used to estimate prognosis, detect cancer that remains after treatment, residual disease, or that has returned after treatment. So this is one thing, is to diagnose, follow up in the treatment, whether it's coming down or increasing. 3, whether it has responded to your treatment by decrease in the amount after treatment. That is, assess response to treatment, and monitor whether a cancer has become resistant to treatment. So all these 6 tumor markers are used to diagnose, follow up, follow for recurrence, and other things. So this can be an enzyme or enzyme like these hormones, enzymes, hormones, calcitonin or beta-gonadotropin, fetal oncogenes like alpha fetoprotein, carbohydrate epitopes reconstructed by the CA15 and used in cancer, colon, receptors, estrogen receptor and progesterone receptors as breast carcinoma, serum and tissue components, proteins, and other molecules like polyamides. These are all tumor markers, but we are concerned about 1 or 2 which we routinely use. This also can be, as I said, tumor markers initially to diagnose, then may also be marked periodically during cancer therapy. For example, a decrease in the level of circulating tumor marker may indicate that cancer is responding to treatment, whereas an increasing or unchanged level indicates that cancer is not responding to treatment. We have to look for alternatives. Can this be used in cancer screening? It can, no tumor marker identified to date is sufficiently sensitive that is able to correctly identify people who have the disease, or specific that is able to correctly identify the people who do not have the disease. So false positives and false negatives are common, and this cannot be alone diagnosed to screen for cancer. But we used to do PSA for screening of the cancer prostate was the investigation done. Nowadays, many people write PSA just like that, even for BPH cases, to know. The serum marker of prostate specific antigen is not helpful as for screening for cancer prostate. If you have suspect cancer prostate, then you'll have to do to confirm it. Previously, we used to do serum acid phosphatase, serum alkaline phosphatase for cancer prostates. Now, digital rectal examination, transrectal ultrasound are more specific and it can be confirmed by serum PSA. So that are the common markers, alpha fetoprotein in liver cancer and germ cell cancers. This can be done. Blood is analyzed to know the levels. Beta human chorionic gonadotropin, again, choriocarcinoma and germ cell tumors. Urine or blood is analyzed. Bladder tumor antigen is to diagnose cancer of the urinary bladder and ureter. Urine is again seen, analyzed for these things. Nuclear matrix protein 22 is again for carcinoma of bladder and urine. So one of the things, there was a discussion in webinar recently, will you do tumor markers in a case of hematuria, wherein you can find a bladder tumor as such by an ultrasound examination? Why should you do a tumor marker to diagnose this? But the answer is, you have done the tumor, the resection of the tumor, and you follow up. If you do these tumor markers and they are positive, you have to look for the upper tract tumors. That's the use of this thing. So obvious cancers which are diagnosed otherwise don't require tumor markers to be done. The prostate specific antigen is one which is extensively used for cancer prostate. Blood is the tissue analyzed. Likewise, prostatic acid phosphatase. We used to do this acid phosphatase for metastatic prostate cancer. There are skeletal metastasis. This increases. And 17 gene signature or prostate cancer again. This tumor is analyzed for these things. And as you know, cancer prostate is the most common thing. And in an 80-year-old, if you do an autopsy, there can be cancer in the prostate if it is analyzed. But presence of cancer doesn't mean cancer disease. So these are in brief about the tumor markers used in urology. Tumor markers used in urology are for cancer prostate and bladder especially. And renal malignancies and other things, obviously you find a lesion in the ultrasound and other things. And follow-up for bladder cancer is usually done, for this tumor markers is done in cancer bladder. Tumor markers can be used as an additional thing for diagnosis, follow-up, sensitivity to treatment, and recurrence after treatment. So this finishes the short note topics and certain other urology topics given to me. And so this examination will be, some other things will be there. And if you have any questions or anything to tell me, we'll do that, right? Yes, one thing I have seen. Stenosis is narrowing of the lumen, the stricture is narrowing due to fibrotic process that reduces the lumen due to any trauma or surgical manipulation, right? It's right, but stenosis is due to obstruction. Anyway, the tubular structure which is there gets blocked due to processes arising within the tube, like an aortic stenosis, atherosclerosis, and other things. That is called stenosis. Whereas stricture, the damage comes from outside, the involvement of the peritubular structures and causing a narrowing. That's a major difference. But usually, both are used synonymously, but not right. Stenosis is for narrowing from within the structure, like mucosal or submucosal deposition, something like that. Whereas a stricture is associated with trauma or infection, as you said. It's from outside, from external side to this stricture. Right, if you don't have anything, we'll stop at this. And if you want any more urological topics to be covered, you can always ask your HOD so that I'll try to cover this. I hope this has been a nice journey with you all. Usually we teach postgraduates and coming down, that's what I was asked by an MCA professor. The specialists were banned from taking classes with undergraduates. They said, they don't require. When asked a team member, is there a ban from a specialist to take class of the undergraduates? You call yourselves assistant professors, associates, and professors and don't teach anybody. Why should you call yourself an assistant professor or associate professor in teaching? You have to teach. That's why, even though I don't take theory classes, whenever I do a procedure or something like catheterization itself, I'll call all the house agents and postgraduates to tell something about that, because the very thing, urology is a thing which you remember day in and day out, by day and by night, is it not? Anything which is not properly done causes some damage to the urethra or the organ, they'll remember it lifelong. So, urologist is a plumber. If your plumbing is not all right, always think of the plumber and blame him that there is leak somewhere, is not coming properly, something like that. That is the job of urology. Urology is very much required for day in and day out. So take care of those things. And with the endoscopic equipment, laparoscopy, robotic surgery, the scope of urology has become very much, and subspecialties are growing up. So I wish at least some of you will take up the specialty of the urology and subspecialty and come up in life. Thank you very much. Good day.